A doctor who is the father of the bride, a secret agent who is the father of the groom, one crazy weekend before the wedding. All of this can only mean one thing. We're comparing the in-laws on this episode of Retro versus Remake.
I'm Reggie Parker.
And I'm Dan Bulick. Welcome to another episode of Retro versus Remake. This is the series where we focus on films and their remakes. Join us as we answer the question, should this remake exist? Today's films are The In-Laws. Getting right into it, the 1979 In-Laws, starring Peter Falk, Alan Arkin, Richard Libertini, and Ed Begley Jr. Directed by Arthur Hiller, screenplay by Andrew Bergman, and music by John Morris. The In-Laws, 2003. Excuse me. Starring Michael Douglas, Albert Brooks, Ryan Reynolds, Lindsay Salone, Robin Tooney, Candice Bergen, David Shute, and Russell Andrews. Directed by Andrew Fleming. Screenplay by Nat Malden, Ed Solomon, and Andrew Bergman gets another writing credit here. And the music is by no one. I didn't see any composers. But they definitely spent a lot of money on that soundtrack because we heard some hits there. I guess we'll get into that when we get to our discussion. So Reggie, what is your first experience with either film?
Yeah, my first experience with the original film was definitely, it was either for like a screenwriting class or like some sort of film studies course that I took either in high school or college. It was really like a highlight of basically like this sort of, I saw it in your notes, but like this sort of odd couple situation, just kind of like seeing some of the chemistry of the two actors in the film. So I've definitely like watched this not just for fun, but also in like a learning setting. And in this remake, I've never seen except for this podcast, so brand new to that.
And I am brand new to everything. I'd never seen it. I'd never really even heard of these movies. I think I remember seeing a trailer of the remake when that came out, but I was like, I'm not going to see that. But now I have seen both of these films. And they are very different films. So my synopsis here is kind of short and very vague when it comes to describing the people in the movie, but bear with me, folks. Here we go. A couple is getting married. The father of the bride is a doctor. The father of the groom is a secret agent of sorts. The fathers are meeting for the first time the weekend of the wedding. It's like the Odd Couple, if one of them was a secret agent. The bride's father, the doctor, accidentally gets thrusted into the groom's father's world of secret ops. There is a plan set in motion with an international power, and the secret ops dad has to see it through with the doctor dad. The doctor is completely against doing this and argues with the secret agent dad a lot. They eventually fly to another country, meet the eccentric leader of a criminal organization. Lots of crazy action and antics ensue, but ultimately the criminal is put to justice. They get lots of money for their families, and the doctor and spy dad ultimately become friends. The end. Very vague, very different plots in both movies, but kind of following the same thing, just like you mentioned before. It's The Odd Couple with some spy shit thrown in there.
I mean, you pretty much nailed it. You've got the secret agent guy and the sort of reluctant um, assistant now, and it's
Right.
all tied in the whole family dynamic. You can't choose your in-laws, Dan.
Apparently not. Since they are so different, I think the best place to start with our comparison is just our leads, and then branch off in any plot points that might be worth talking about.
I guess when we're talking about our leads, we can start with Peter Falk, who's playing Vincent Ricardo.
He travels a lot on business.
I work for the CIA.
And Michael Douglas, who's playing Steve Tobias.
Our son and daughter are going to be married. We're stuck with each other.
Two very different takes on the sort of secretive spy guy, you know what I mean? Like CIA agent, undercover agent of sorts, I guess would be the way to describe him. Peter Falk, classic Peter Falk. He's just so kind of like laid back and just like nonchalant about everything. And there's just something very fun about that dynamic. He'll meet with like an international arms deal and he's just like, the Mets. Wonder who's pitching tonight. And like, there's like little asides about like the price is right. Like, he's just way less action oriented than Michael Douglas's Stephen Tobias, who like from the rip is just doing like Agent Cody Banks shit.
Cody Banks. Nice pull.
Thanks, man. Like the movies just start so different. I mean, when you look at even like the action in the first film, it's not even Vince Ricardo that's doing it. When the Treasury armored truck gets robbed and they steal like the engravings from the mint, he's just basically sitting on the roof and he's like, "Oh, here you are, finally." Checks his watch. He's just kind of having a nonchalant, almost like a How the Kids type of situation. Um, and on the other hand, Michael Douglas is like just literally in the shit. Like he's in the middle of like an arms deal, and there's a shootout, and there's a chase, and it's just two different ways to approach this character. What were your kind of early impressions?
Like you said, Peter Falk's just a pretty laid back kind of a guy, pretty easygoing in kind of every situation. He never saw him sweat, you know. He's always pretty calm. And then Michael Douglas, I mean, he definitely had a lot more action. He had a lot of fighting for him, especially in that restaurant bathroom. I was just like, oh damn, all right. So like, I'll go a little bit Bourne more than Cody Banks for him. He's just doing like some crazy shit. Pretty similar type of portrayal. That he's also like pretty like sort of laissez-faire attitude towards all this stuff. You know, he's like, oh come on, Jerry, what are you doing? This is nothing. He's like, everything's gonna be fine. Even though it's a little more physical, it's still kind of emulating that same kind of just like this kind of laid back spy who's not too worried about stuff. Like, yeah, everything will be fine. Yeah, don't worry. I got something on Sunday. I don't exactly know what it is. Oh, your son's wedding. Right. I knew that. I could have told you that. So two very sort of laid back portrayals there. Very different missions they're on though. I don't know if we want to talk about that. You kind of mentioned that the Peter Falk has to get these engravings from the mint, while Michael Douglas's character is it's just a little odd what he has to do. So he has this radioactive fluid or extract from a submarine, because every submarine has like lets out some radioactivity, and it's like a specific signature of a certain submarine, because there's a Russian submarine that's being sold in the black market and he's trying to sell it to some guy, and then he has this container which is proof that he has it. It's overly complicated.
It is.
It ultimately doesn't really matter in the remake, because it's like, okay, whatever, they could go after the Cup of Christ. It really doesn't matter. They're going after something in that remake.
Yeah, and that's the thing about both situations. I mean, to be fair to both films, the plan is overly complex and like really at the end of the day kind of inconsequential. I don't think that I ever really thought, especially in the first movie, that I really didn't think about like the actual implications on like the world economy if like these bad guys got the hold of the engravings and started printing bad money and causing inflation. And like even Peter Falk, like his description of it is like, oh, it'd be chaos in the streets. Like he's so nonchalant about it that I'm actually not worried about it either. Because like I don't know, like the guy just seems like he has it. And in the remake, it's kind of the same thing. It's like he's capable, so I'm not too worried about ultimately what the bad is. But to your point, it's a little more complicated, and it felt to me like they were working around a joke a little bit, like the 20-year-old, the runaway, and all this stuff, like all this coded language. And ultimately, they were describing a nuclear sub. Like you said, it didn't matter if it was a nuclear sub or if it was the same thing as the last movie. You know, it's an adventure that they're going to go on. I think to your point too, though, you mentioned that both of them kind of had the backdrop of Sunday is my daughter's wedding. We get a bit of a difference here in the two, which is Michael Douglas doesn't remember what he has to do Sunday, and Peter Falk does. It's a small little note, but it comes back into play and one of the differences. So I definitely wanted to kind of put a pin in that and make a note that there is a difference in how kind of nonchalant they are, because one character is out there. Peter Falk is definitely an out there dude, but he kind of remembers certain obligations in a way that Steve Tobias is not remembering. He's not even remembering his own daughter's wedding. He knows I got something Sunday, and then has to be reminded. So that's a key difference to me that I think comes back into the play.
Just one little correction too. It's his son. His son was the one getting married there
Ah,
too. So
yeah.
no worries. In the original, Vince, he's out a lot. This because this is the first time he's meeting his in-laws and everything. But he's like you said, he knows it's his son's wedding. He's still married in that original film, as opposed to Steve Tobias, who's divorced, doesn't really know anything about his son. Like, what school did you even go to? It's like, oh, it's your wedding. I kind of knew that. So yeah, he's definitely more of a sort of a absentee father in the remake. Maybe it just shows that he's too dedicated to his job, I suppose.
I guess so. It's one of those things where it's all part of what the key differences are. Like, the absentee father thing, the divorcee thing, not being able to take care of certain responsibilities. I didn't really get that vibe from the original film. It felt like he definitely had a secret, and it affected his relationship with other people. I mean, but his family more or less seemed kind of okay with what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Minus like maybe an outburst here or there. But like Steve Tobias clearly has this kind of like headwind with his family and friends, and like it is actually ripping apart his family
Mm-hmm.
in a way that it just adds another element to it that comes into play in a couple of different ways. I would say this too, that I think I actually kind of prefer parts of the Peter Falk portrayal and how little we do know about him early on in the film, because there is this mystery. We're not getting these action sequences. We're not getting the spy equipment and shootouts and stuff. We got a guy that, like, for a good chunk of the movie, if not more than half of it, is he a con man? Is he a spy? Is he a rogue agent? Is he on our side? Is he selling U.S. secrets? Like, there's a lot of mystery that we have to find out about Vince Ricardo that I think actually serves the film really well, because there's a little ambiguity as to what the mission ultimately is. Whereas like Steve Tobias is very straightforward. I mean, there are some things that you may not trust about him, but I think they show you so much of him kind of in
Yeah.
action and doing things that
Mm-hmm.
he, he's kind of clearly the good guy in this
Mm-hmm.
one,
Yeah.
minus his own family interactions where he's kind of the bad guy. Honestly, I think you're probably better off in most cases being ambiguous about who he is in his work life, but being good in his family life, as knowing what he does in his work life and being not so good in his family life. I think it's harder for audiences to get behind the remake dad.
Just jumping in on that. Yeah, the original does that really well, kind of playing with the ambiguity of the Peter Falk character. Just like, is he good? Is he bad? There's several instances where Sheldon, who we'll get into shortly, just like he even calls like the U.S. And he gets like, yeah, he's not a CIA. He's been kicked out over a year. So it's a it's a really fun element that the original really plays with, and it really does pay off at the end, because you're up until the very end, you're still not sure about this guy. You're like, he seems like he's good, but there's a lot of evidence for the contrary too. Like, he could just be kind of doing this shit on his own. He kind of says he's sort of doing it on his own too. So the original plays with that a lot, and it really does pay off. And the remake kind of plays with that a little bit too. There's a call to the FBI, and the FBI is like, "What? He quit like a year ago. He was kicked out a year ago for being too crazy." But you're sort of not really buying it. Like you said, he has too many toys to play with. And another thing, he has a partner,
Right.
right? And then he's talking about, like, I trained you, taught you everything you know. I don't think that he would have a partner if he's sort of rogue or a bad guy. And that payoff at the end is definitely not done as well as it was in the original. And that was definitely one of my favorite parts of the character, that ambiguity that they were playing with the whole time in the original.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I started thinking about like another film that kind of plays with that. But like, I'm sure you've seen it, but Viggo Mortensen's like A History of Violence. There,
Oh yeah.
there's this idea of like you're not seeing the spy gadgets and the parachutes and the shootouts. So what you're seeing is a guy who's like, "Hey, buddy, you mind taking this bag over here?" And like he's doing like all this mundane shit. Like he's like, "I'm gonna go," literally like in the middle of his friend potentially getting shot. He's just like having a coffee or like a milk at the bar and just like watching The Price is Right, seemingly for the first time ever. And he just has these like these little beats. His office isn't great. It like is he working for the CIA, or is he just like, again, is he a con man? Is he a thief? Like the first interaction you see in the movie is him clearly talking to someone that just robbed the U.S. Treasury. So I don't know. You know, the jury's out on this guy,
Hmm.
and like you mentioned, throughout the entire film, I said half the movie, but you're right. Up until the end, you could have gone either direction with that, and I think that it just is such a good plot device because you don't have to do all the flashy stuff. It's like I appreciate the flash and trying to kind of up the action in the remake, but it's the things between the lines is what made the first film a lot of fun for this particular character.
Hmm. I'll defend the remake a little bit. Just going back to the family. Uh, in the original, I'm pretty sure his son and wife do not know what he does for a living. I'm pretty sure they're kept in the dark. I kind of happy that the remake didn't really do that. The son definitely knows. I'm not entirely sure that the ex-wife knows. I'm gonna assume she kind of knows, but they didn't keep them in the dark because that kind of like got to me a little bit. It's like, okay, so your family doesn't know, but this new guy who's gonna be like your in-law, you're gonna divulge like everything to him. You just met him, so that was a little weak, I thought, in the original, that he had to keep everybody in the dark except for this new guy. So I appreciated the remake, kind of just being no, they know, and now everybody's gonna know. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Like the family just thinking that you may have to help me out because I wasn't paying that much attention. What was he, like an international salesman in the first movie? Do you remember offhand?
I don't remember. I just remember like he went to different countries and like he was making up these fucking stories at the dinner
I love
table
the
about
stories.
like insects carrying kids away in their beaks and the guacamole act of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't quite get what he was in the first movie.
Okay, so that's fair. I mean, from what I remember, they know at least that he travels, that he
Yeah.
has a lot of phone calls and secrecy and things like that. So they're aware that his job is not. It's just not obvious to them at all. And like you said, it is weird that his family would just be left in the dark for all this time and not ever ask like real questions about who he is. And to your point, in defense of the remake, it actually weakens his family in the movie. Like
Mm.
if you look at it, they all seem kind of clueless, and I think Peter Falk is playing clueless while knowing every single thing that's going on, being like 20 steps ahead of everybody else. But like that is fair for his family to just have their head in the sand so much was a little odd.
Do we want to go on to Sheldon? Because I don't know how, or Sheldon, or our secondary character, because I don't know how much more we can say without really going, because their dynamic is really important to both
Yeah,
films.
yeah, I would say so because even with like you mentioned the dinner party scene with the TT flies, the reaction from the other father is actually important to the conversation. So before even really like diving into that, you're right. We do have to talk about the second lead.
So our doctors, we have Alan Arkin playing Sheldon Cornpet in the original,
He's got a successful practice.
Mr. Hershon, I cannot work this way.
and he is a dentist. And then Albert Brooks is Jerry Pacer, and he is a podiatrist.
He is mentally ill! I am in Barbara Streisand's airplane. Steve is taking me to France.
So where do you want to start with that?
The one thing that really differentiates the two, because they're supposed to be, at least from what I can tell, they're supposed to be basically like the same character, but they are not, at least as we see them on screen. I would say that Alan Arkin does just he's the perfect the term is the perfect straight man in this scene. Like while all the craziness is going, he's got this kind of like steel, like non-flinching thing. Like even when he is actually flinching and scared, there like he's got this very dry humor about him. To your point, when Peter Falk's telling his wild story about the TT flies and Sheldon, I was in the bush for 9 months in Guatemala, and these TT flies in their beaks, and he's like,
And they have
beaks,
beaks now?
huh? Beaks. Must. It's like, yeah, I wish I still had the slides, but they got magnetized. Like, yeah, I really wish I had seen those too. Like,
Yeah. He's so passive aggressive during that dinner.
I
It's
love
pretty
it, dude.
cool.
And the guacamole act, like this character is no fool. Like Alan Arkin knows something's up immediately, and is actually like kind of handling it the right way, in my opinion, which is all right. Like he's gonna be part of family. I'm not gonna push back, but I'm skeptical, and you can see it in his face, and you can see it throughout the film that he's very skeptical of everything that's happening. Whereas Albert Brooks isn't really doing that. Like he's skeptical, but honestly, he's kind of like more neurotic, and he's just like not on board with really anything. It's not just his interactions with Stephen Tobias. It's his interaction with his family. Like
Hmm.
he doesn't go on flights. He gets vertigo. He carries a collapsible cup. Like he doesn't seem very confident in himself, but yet he likes to throw his weight around a lot, and it's just a very different portrayal. Whereas like Alan Arkin to me felt confident in himself, and yes, he's a no nonsense character. They both are, but he I don't know, like he just carried himself better in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit by design. Just talking about the Albert Brooks, Jerry Pacer character. He is sort of less capable. They sort of gave him all these phobias, like you said, the fear of heights, fear of going on a plane. Just like gave him all these fears to make him a weaker character, because I think sort of the point is now that he met Steve, he's overcoming these fears, and that sort of gives him a character arc with that, which is okay. I'm a huge Albert Brooks fan. I think I really like anything he's in, so I do enjoy like all his performances, and I think yeah, he gives a pretty good performance here. I love his humor. I think it's great. But then I just watched him after Alan Arkin did the Sheldon performance, and I have to say I think Alan Arkin as Sheldon Cornpet is one of the funniest performances I have ever seen in a movie. I couldn't stop laughing. Like you said, man, just his face, just facial expressions alone, just like to me, it just like looked like he had this pent up rage that he just couldn't quite let out. He's like, "What are you doing?" Like, I can't deal with this stuff anymore. Like you said, he seems tough, but he's really trying to like hold back and all this shit, and it comes out so well in his performance, and I was just so enjoyable to watch him just like deal with everything that Vince put him in. It was so enjoyable.
Did we hit the little boy on 6th Avenue? I'll kill him, I swear to God, kill him!
I'd really like a chance to explain. No explaining!
Oh my!
You know, we're tipping a little early here, but the Peter Falk Alan Arkin combination is just so clean because you got Peter Falk who's you know this like quiet chaos to him, which is yeah, take the key. Here's the safe. It's behind the JFK safe, and it's like a guy who you know is skeptical about everything that's going on is still going through with the act. He's like, all right, you know, for my daughter, I'll do this. I'll do this one thing because you know it's best for the family, and just like you mentioned, Arkin's the face, and I don't wanna, but like, but I'll do it. You know, you got like just his whole demeanor. Like I said before, he's a straight man. It's perfect, dude. It's absolutely
Mhm.
perfect. And like when he does start to kind of collapse in certain moments, like when he grabs me, he's yelling, I can't. I'm not gonna sit here and get shot. Like let me go. Like there's just so many fun. Excuse me. There's just so many fun interactions, and like you see, like you mentioned, and there's a bit of this in a remake. You see the arc of this guy who's like uptight. You know, I'm a pillar of my community, a respected doctor. I would never, you know, be caught doing these types of things. And to see him kind of like come out of his own shell and like really make some like big time moves, and like even Peter Falk acknowledges it. It's like, Shelly, you were great back there. The way you handled the way you handled those guys. Like he handles himself really well. So although he may not have the same attitude as Peter Falk,
Mhm.
I actually put them more on equal footing
Yeah.
because he's immediately skeptical. He's not buying any of the bullshit, but he will do whatever it takes to kind of like survive and get across. And he's just as funny in his own way as Peter Falk is, and it's a very clean dynamic that I enjoyed. So I appreciate you even saying that like it's one of the funniest portrayals you've ever seen because I agree with you. It's one of the funniest combinations that I've seen in film.
And yeah, just going back to your point, he does like contribute a lot. Like he puts himself in high danger situations just to like kind of get it done. Like you said, like he went back to get those keys. He's getting shot at by snipers, doing the serpentine thing, just running in circles. Serpentine, serpentine. Yeah. He's running like an idiot. You know, he's getting shot at a lot in that original movie, and he's kind of just like, hiding behind a car. It's like, please, I just got this package out of a safe. I don't know what it is.
Peter Falk's supposed to be kind of like the funny one, but Alan Arkin, his physical comedy is so funny. Like when he's running around the car and the guy's trying to shoot him, and like he's like hiding behind and the guy's trying to shoot over, and like that stuff's funny. By the end, Peter Falk is like looking for him. He like peeks out from behind the car. That's hilarious. Like you mentioned the serpentine scene when he gets the keys and he's basically back almost behind the car, and Peter Falk yells out serpentine, Shelley, and he runs back into the line of fire to, to serpentine. It's these little choices, these little moments that just make this movie so damn funny, man. And like you said, you couldn't talk about Peter Falk's performance without talking about Alan Arkin's performance. I can't talk about Alan Arkin's performance without talking about Peter Falk. They just play off each other so well. It's a beautiful combination.
I mean, yeah, it's just overall just like a really hilarious performance. Like I'm gonna put it more on Alan Arkin. Like he had me cracking up the most between the two of them. The way he did everything, man. His deliveries were just on point. He's like, "What you did really well there, Shelley." Yeah. I went on instinct. I went insane or something like that. It's just, he's so good at it. I mean, it's not. The remake's not too bad either. Like I said, I'm a huge Albert Brooks fan. So like I thought his performance was all right, but he doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't have that will or that agency that the original character has in the original film. So it's not as fun, I guess I would say. Like you said, he's a lot more neurotic too, so that could be a little bit too much at times. I don't know. I thought it was okay.
No, that's the thing. It is okay, and it's like you're kind of comparing it to a really well-renowned movie that's kind of known for that on-screen chemistry. So you're fighting kind of an uphill battle because we've seen this combination, and it is so funny. I mean, another scene, not to keep talking about how great that combination is in the original, when they're in the diner and he's yelling, "You had me," they're yelling about international crime and like forging things, and then like Alan Arkin, I've never met this man before in my life. And like you said, that pent up rage, because when he lets that rage monster out, it's like in these spots and it's done so well because it's like he keeps it very calm and Vince, I'm gonna tell you this one time, and then he goes so high and like when he chooses to do so, it's incredible. I think where the remake loses a bit of that dynamic is I think they made or trying to make Michael Douglas too cool. He's a little too cool, like you said, with the punching scenes. He's like fighting people. He's got all the right gadgets and gizmos. He's in control of everything. He's in control because he's making eye signals to this person and his partner's over there. So he's got cover, like you said, with the partner. And Peter Falk, I don't know, does he even have a gun? At certain points throughout the film. So like, there's question marks about Peter Falk's capacity and capability that reinforces why Sheldon should be skeptical about him. Because like, bro, what are you talking about? Again, going back to the guacamole act. It's like he immediately smells out a bullshitter. Whereas like, even if Albert Brooks thinks that Michael Douglas is full of shit, he can't really think it because the guy's got an arsenal and a partner and fighting skills. So I mean, the misunderstandings that happen in the restaurant, which is him thinking that he's talking about prostitutes and Olga and stuff like that. By the way, I thought it was kind of weird that it felt like that plot point was kind of working around the joke rather than the jokes kind of working around the plot. Like the whole 20-year-old runaway thing to me felt weird that's how they're describing a submarine. Like, I don't know, just there were some weird beats that threw me off. But to your point, they're not bad performances. They're just different.
Yeah, kind of going back to what you said before, that like the Peter Falk character, like we don't know, like we should be skeptical, just like Sheldon's skeptical. So that kind of works, like that he's kind of pushing back, like I don't know, Vince, this doesn't make sense. I don't know if I could trust you. And like, who's this guy? This general guy. What am I gonna do? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And then like Michael Douglas, though, like you said, we know he's incredibly capable in a fight. We know he's got like all this technology. He's got that knee dart thing, whatever. He's got like all these weapons. He's seen the whole arsenal. Albert Brooks' character. He knows he has a partner. He has little reason to think that this man is, not capable. I mean, he knows that this guy can handle his shit. So like the amount of resistance I guess he's putting up against him, just it's not sort of warranted just because like, okay, this is a very capable spy and you know what he's got and what he can do, as opposed to Sheldon, who's like, I don't really know you. What are you? I don't see any proof. I need some proof. And we don't get any of that in the original. And I think that's what makes that dynamic even more fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's like going back that the burden of proof. I mean, Sheldon, even the way he gets caught up in all of it, like it's still again a huge question mark. The guy left the engraving in his house, putting his family in danger. His office looks like complete trash. Like, the I guess the most impressive thing about his office is the JFK picture.
Mm-hmm. Like, assigned to him.
Yeah. Hey Vince, at least we tried.
And I love that. And they reference that later because he's like, pay of pigs? That was my idea. That was your idea? That's great.
You were involved with the Bay of Pigs?
Involved? That was my idea.
Which is back in that diner scene, him acknowledging the Bay of Pigs thing. And like, that's funny. We don't get that exact sort of validation in the other film. The validation comes through everything else that you're seeing, which is the shootouts, the knee darts, and everything else. So it's like, I know this guy is like, I know he's capable, and I'm pretty sure he's with the good guys because otherwise, why even bother to bring in Albert Brooks?
Mm-hmm.
Like if he's just an arms dealer, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for him to get Albert Brooks involved. But I don't know. There's other ways to handle that situation. So I think that unfortunately the way they kind of framed the issue or like how they both got involved together, just Michael Douglas is a much more showy spy than Peter Falk. So I have less question marks about his spying and more question marks about sort of what the end game is.
Yeah. And like I said before, that's really a lot of the fun of the Vince character in the original, and you definitely don't have that in the remake. So I don't know if we're coming to an end here with our characters, but it sounds like we're kind of on the same page when it comes to who we prefer. That's definitely the original pairing of Vince and Shelley. Although, I mean, Michael Douglas and Albert Brooks, they still got some pretty good back and forths, and they have their own moments, but it's definitely not as good as the original.
Yeah, it's not as good, and I think it starts to your point to bring us into like other characters and other choices that are made in the films because Peter Falk and Alan Arkin really shine in the movie because they're more or less the only ones of real like consequence and the only ones really starring in the film. Everyone else, even including their families, are basically bit players in their story. Whereas in this remake, we've added some elements, and I think to start, I would like to mention a character that's not in both films, but the partner. And I want to see kind of what your take on was of the inclusion of the partner.
Yeah, so Robin Tooney is the partner. She's playing Angela Harris.
With the CIA.
Now we have to kill him.
Oh, Ange, enough already.
I thought it was an interesting touch. But like I said before, I really liked what the original did, and then we weren't sure if this was a good guy. I think the inclusion of her, like, it's kind of a dead giveaway that this guy is legit. He has a partner, and then, other than seeing his whole arsenal, but like, she just really confirmed that this guy really is in the CIA, and we don't have to question that anymore in the movie. And it's weird that they still play with that throughout the remake. But her character, like, as a whole, I thought it was I thought she was kind of pointless in the beginning. She had some comedic things, but then she kind of does have like a turn where she kind of turns on Steve Tobias there, but it doesn't really go anywhere. So I was kind of hoping she'd be in there more to kind of do something, but she didn't really do too much. I mean, I love the actress. I've always had like a thing for her since The Craft, so I was happy to see her there. But I don't think her character did too much.
Like, she's a great actress. She looked great in the movie. We've had that conversation about some actresses before. So, like, no, I mean, I think that what ultimately kind of bummed me out with that arc was the fact that she had to turn because Michael Douglas, I think, including the partner, kind of reinforced that he did have issues in all of his relationships, whether it was with his son, his ex-wife, at this point now, Albert Brooks's character, but like she's a capable spy as well. And I thought that they before that turn, I thought he was going to say, you know what, kid, you're right. You handle part of. I thought that this was going to be a growing point and a arc turn for him as well. But he more or less forced her hand into being like, if I'm like, it's like job growth. Really, it's a strange job, but it's like if there's no place for me in our partnership, then I don't think it needs to continue on. So I
Hmm.
understand her turning on him, and honestly, it sort of undermined what I think the big difference between Peter Falk and Michael Douglas is here, which is that Michael Douglas is not really that great of a guy in his personal life, and I think that it unfortunately, I don't think that I really see the turn that makes me think that he's a better kind of like dad or guy. Like he kind of admits that he was wrong about things, but like
Hmm.
I thought having the partner there would have been a nice way to like transition that into him,
Hmm.
you know, letting loose the reins, giving her her own agency again, and letting
Hmm.
her like run the show a little bit because he's getting up there, he's getting older, maybe he wants to retire,
Hmm.
like basically Peter Falk does in the original film. So turning her evil, I didn't think it was the best choice because it does sort of undermine Michael Douglas again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if he had like given her the responsibility, it would have shown a lot of growth in his character. That ability to kind of let go of it and be like, all right, I can trust you. But he doesn't, and yeah, and it sucks too because like she turns and then she's gone. Like we don't really get to see her kind of be the villain. She just gets pushed out of the way. Like pretty much, she pretty much just gets the shaft. Like, all right, you're done with the movie. You don't need to be here anymore. And it sucks because like the actress, I wanted to see her do some more with the role, but they didn't really give her too much.
No, and it's really a shame because you have this dynamic. It's like you've got the son who he's not really interacting with. He spends more time with his partner than his own family.
Hmm.
And in this moment where it's almost like, the sad puppy dog guy, she's like, all right, it's the day of the wedding. We're not going to be able to pull off this kind of exchange. Maybe, boss, you can let me do it. And he's like, nah, fuck that. It's like, what? Like,
Yeah.
why? Like, why not? And I don't feel like like you mentioned, I don't feel like she's a bad character. I don't think that she became evil because she just was. I think that he pushed her into that. And then the minute that she does get something that could resemble an interesting arc for herself, the bad guy like you said, pushes her, like literally pushes her out of the film. You don't see her again until credits start rolling. And like, which is screwed up too because no one thought to check in on her. Like, like I don't know. There even could have been a part where she came back and realized that she messed up, and then again, he could have once again said, "Oh, you know what? I know why you did this. Here's the keys to the warehouse. It's yours now. I'm gonna spend some time with my family." Like that's a decent arc, and it just doesn't happen. It's weird actually.
Yeah, I thought she was gonna come back in and kind of save the day at the end there, but nope, she didn't do anything. So yeah, ultimately, kind of a pointless kind of a character, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's just other ways to have that dynamic because I mean, ultimately, if all she does is like they kind of like talk back and forth amongst each other about what's going on.
Hmm.
She shows up every once in a while and like basically like, here's the van, let's go. And then by the end, it's like, hey, is it finally my time? Is it finally my time? And the answer that the film presents is no. And then, like you said, then that's it. And I don't know, other than showing that Michael Douglas isn't a great guy in his relationships, I don't know what else she's in the movie for. And it's unfortunate because she could have had a really good arc. She was there. She had an impact. Maybe not the greatest impact, and that's it.
All right. Maybe the next character we should go over is sort of our villain, because both movies have the villain.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Okay. So we have Richard Libertini as General Garcia and David Schuett as Jean-Pierre Thibodeau.
In both films, the villains are more or less comedic relief. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they do have their sort of menacing villainry, as it were, but they're really supposed to bring more levity to the situation than they do terror. And I think that both actors are able to pull that off in their own way. General Garcia is a character. I may have to let you start because
I
uh,
mean, sure, yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect. We get sort of this talk from Vince, like, all right, this guy's pretty bad, and you just don't look at his scar on his face, and it's like, so that little tiny Z, and I don't know if that's supposed to mean anything, but he has like a tiny Z scar on his face. But that's not the weirdest thing about him, because he has Senor Pepe. Senor Pepe, for those who haven't seen it, this is pretty much just like, what do you, just like a hand puppet? Just like eyes and lipstick drawn between his thumb and index finger that you just kind of, Senor Pepe.
Warner Brothers proudly pronounces you.
And I was just like, that's where South Park got it from.
exactly. If you hadn't seen the producers, South Park does the same thing with Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah. Taco flavored kisses. I was like, oh, okay. So I've seen the effects of this movie in other
Yeah.
places. Excellent. Yes, he's a little bit insane, our general. Not only having him kiss both of our main characters, but also having him just, drink water, which is just going right through his hand onto the ground. He really takes good care of that Senor Pepe.
I think maybe part of it is just time and stuff like that. Like, I don't think that his character has aged very well in terms of like
No.
the jokes, stuff like that. Like, it's funny still, and
Hmm.
it's definitely odd, but like I think it sort of starts to take me a little bit out of the movie a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's a little too out of there for everything we've seen previously. Like we've never seen anything just like this came out of left field. That fucking hand puppet. It's like what the fuck are we doing here? What this guy's like evil? It was yeah. It definitely took me out of it.
Yeah, like you got the hand puppet, you got the flag with the she's a prostitute from the village. It's like I appreciate that he's kind of like a mad general, and I guess you could be making a statement about dictators in general and just kind of like poking fun at them. He does still have his funny moments outside of the Senior Pepe stuff, like the firing squad scene is very very funny. I like that, and I think that both of our villains do this really well. Is that they turn on the villainry pretty quickly. So one minute you're kind of just laughing at them for being patently ridiculous, and then the next minute you're terrified of what they could be capable of. And I think that General Garcia pulls that off, even with the sort of slapsticky, like over the top. It almost feels like a scene out of like Airplane more
Yeah,
than like
definitely.
grounded in this film. It's just like you said, it's out there.
Yeah, it's mostly the Senor Pepe thing. I thought the flag thing was kind of funny.
Of
They
course.
double down on that joke later when he gives out the medals. It also has topless women on it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I appreciated that. But yeah, he is more of a zany character in a movie that hasn't really been zany. So it does kind of take you out of it. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, also compared to our Jean Pierre in the remake.
I mean, Jean Pierre Thibodeau, played by Mr. Suzette, I think is more or less to your point. He's not as zany of a character. He's a little bit more grounded in realism, in my opinion, which is kind of weird that the movies kind of flip in that way. Which is yeah, because like the original film felt grounded in realism, which is why I think it worked. That yeah, there were some like odd beats and moments, but overall it felt like something that could happen to two kind of like regular guys. And Falk clearly has resources that are hard to really explain. In this other film, you've got this over the top spy character who's having like shootouts and fights in the Chinese restaurant that everyone but the in laws are in on the storyline there. Like everyone else knows about the time he shot that guy and stuff. And then like you introduce this character that is kind of like less zany. Like I guess really the only bit, like the really only the joke about him is that he's gay or like or maybe closeted at least, and that influences some of his decisions with the fat cobra. But honestly, I think that besides maybe a few times where I think they may beat that joke in the ground a little bit, they start to kind of edge out a little bit. I think he's overall actually the stronger villain and overall the funnier character because he's able to do a lot more for the film.
Yeah. He has a lot, like I said before, he has a lot more screen time, so they are kind of able to flesh him out and kind of give him sort of more of an arc, I guess, if you could say that in the remake. Yeah, they definitely play that, like, I'm not gay, but I'm attracted to you, Fat Cobra card. Maybe a little bit too heavy, but, it's not too much where I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm done with this. I think they played it just the right amount where I'm not sick of it, and I did think it was kind of funny. But he has like other weird quirks, like he's like I've been working with Deepak Chopra, just reading these books to kind of get over my anger, and he's got little funny beats here and there. He was a pretty enjoyable character, and I was kind of happy because like in the original we just see the general, and then like once the cops come in, then you don't see the general anymore, and he comes in pretty late in the movie. As opposed to Jean-Pierre, who's kind of comes in like a little bit before the halfway point. So we see him like sort of in his mansion, and then he's later at the wedding. So we get to see him just have a little bit more fun with that character. Just him and the Fat Cobra relationship, and just some good back and forth between him and Albert Brooks. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think those are the moments where Albert Brooks really got to shine. I think that honestly his chemistry with the Thibodeau character actually more so than his chemistry with the Michael Douglas, Stephen Tobias character.
That was a good soak, and I thank you very much. Wow.
I think that you're right. Like you said, he has the Deepak Chopra thing. So when one of his henchmen fails him, he's like, in the past I would have killed you. He's like, but I'll let you run for your life. And then like he picks up an assault rifle and he's shooting at him. And it's like it is those moments. It's the quiet death, and Fat Cobra. I'm so attracted to you. And then
it's just which is so weird because I think homosexuality is disgusting, but I'm so attracted to you.
Yeah, it's so great. Even like the bit about like do you want American style swimsuit, Europe, French style,
Soviet Union.
Which is a funny bit. Like that's a funny line, and like it kind of reminds me of the spirit of the original film when they find these little moments. And I think that they find them the most with this Thibodeau character on screen. And to your point, like he's actually a much more capable villain. Like I do believe that Thibodeau is able to enact his plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he is able to steal a nuclear sub. He's able to show up just to the wedding and like get the drop on the hero. So he's a very capable character. There's a bit of a one note bit to the joke, but he's actually fleshed out enough that it doesn't feel grating. Like you said, it's like right at the line where it's like, no, you know what, this is fine.
Yeah, it's not like the producers where they were just like, hey, the gay, right? They're gay. Get it? This right. Thibodeau's gay. He wasn't just he's the gay guy. It's he had a lot more things going on. So his character definitely worked, and yeah, I totally agree with you. He's definitely the stronger of the two characters. And I also kind of like I said, just going back to him and his back and forth Albert Brooks, you don't really hear like a no from Albert Brooks necessarily, right? So he is kind of walking like maybe he's a little bit attracted to him as well. He just says like, we can't do this here, or like, not right now. I'm big, but I'm not easy too. So is he playing a character, or is he kind of interested? So I kind of like how Albert Brooks really played that too with him.
Yeah, it really did pull out some of the best of Albert Brooks in this film. I wish that they pushed it a little bit further with Albert Brooks there because he does have this relationship with the Cobra. I think that there could have been more moments where he, the same way that we see Alan Arkin, there could have been more moments where he like took charge of the situation in a way that Michael Douglas couldn't in this particular case because Thibodeau's not attracted to Stephen Tobias. He's attracted to the Fat Cobra. And it gives Albert Brooks a lot more like weight in the film, and I think that they do it a little bit, like he kind of goes off with him by himself and tries to get the jump on him with the plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
But then like he's immediately undermined by the partner, which again it's like here's a partner again making things actually worse in a way that it shouldn't be. Like she should have been there to, I don't know, elevate the film. And I don't know, not to go back to the partner for too long, but I just felt that I liked that dynamic, and I wish they found more things to do with it. But what we did see was pretty good.
Do you want to go into the other characters in the movie? I mean, there's not many similar characters other than really a family.
Yeah. I think we can kind of bundle the family all into one conversation. I don't think we even need to split them up.
Yeah.
But
Well, but there's
uh
some famous people in the remake. That's why I
oh,
kind of listed them all. In general, like the family in the original, they're so not important to the story at all. They are extremely like background characters. It really doesn't matter who they are or what they're doing or what their names are. They definitely fleshed out the family a lot more in the remake. I'll drop some names here. We got Ryan Reynolds as the son, Mark Tobias.
You want a piece of me? You bet I do.
Lindsay Sloane as the daughter, Melissa Pizer.
It's to provide me with a beautiful new daughter.
Then we have Maria Ricosa as the wife, Catherine Pizer.
Your father's going to France with Barbara Streisand.
And then Candice Bergen comes in out of nowhere as Judy Tobias.
But we had crazy, crazy sex. Oh,
Yeah, so this is actually one of the things I was kind of hoping the remake would sort of go into is the family, because the movie is called The In-Laws, but we only spend the movie with like two guys in the original. so I was happy to see them incorporated more in the remake. I'll start off with that.
I would agree. The family in the original, you really don't get much out of them. Like I said, to your point before, I felt that the Peter Falk, sort of the Ricardo family, were undermined by the fact that they were oblivious to his occupation. The wife, on the Alan Arkin side, does get some pretty good beats. I guess the daughter went to Yale, so that's kind of important, but not that important. But the wife does get some funny beats, like when she finds the engravings and goes to the bank. And then when she realizes basically like this is causing like trouble with the law, she has like a pretty strong moment for that film where she's like, that bastard, talking about Vince. And it's like you get why her and Alan Arkin are together in that moment, even though
Mhm.
she doesn't have a lot of screen time. That's pretty much all I can say about the original.
Yeah, they really don't do anything. Yeah, I can't really think of anything other than they just get the money at the end, the two kids, but they're really just not important in the remake, which is weird because it's like, it's all about their wedding. That's why we're all coming together, but we don't really get any screen time. What's his name? Vince yells at the son a little bit at dinner, which is like weird. It felt a little bit out of character, especially since we learned that he is the good guy. But that definitely threw me off in the beginning because like I said, I'd never seen it. So I thought like maybe he is a bad guy because he's kind of just snapping his, just lost his shit at his son for like nothing. So threw me off a little bit, and maybe the movie was trying to do that. But yeah, really nothing of consequence with the family in that original film.
Nah, I mean, you get kind of the funny beat at the end where they all know that they have an extra couple million on hand, and the daughter is smart, so that is part of her thing. She talks about gender norms and stuff like that throughout the film. She picks up pretty quickly. It's like, oh yeah, invitation. Yep, cool. Like that's funny, but then we really get to see like a Ryan Reynolds do more.
Hmm.
I, cause I mean, we've seen Ryan Reynolds sort of play this type of character before, the kind of like seemingly oblivious, kind of like buffoon's probably too strong of a word, but he's just like, oh geez, I don't know what's going on. And then he kind of gets a turn, which I enjoyed. But
No, I think he knows, right? Doesn't he know like what his dad does? He's just kind of playing dumb. Like
yeah, exactly.
he tells his fiance, she's like, yeah, I've sworn to secrecy. I really can't say what my dad does. So he definitely knows, and he's just kind of playing dumb. It's everybody else that's kind of like, what's going on around here?
Yeah, I think that unlike the first film, no one really, besides his own family, like the in laws, trusts Tobias more than his own family in a way that you don't see.
Hmm.
Like they don't know, I guess, how bad he can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
So like they're giving him hard benefit of the doubt, whereas like his family's like, my dad's not great, and like the ex wife is like, no, he does like extravagant things like this because he has no soul,
Yeah.
and that family dynamic comes into play a lot more in fleshing out Michael Douglas's Stephen Tobias. Yeah, no, I mean you're right. I guess when I was saying like Ryan Reynolds being oblivious, he definitely knows his dad does, but like he is oblivious in like other ways. Like he never told his wife that he had slept with one of the bridesmaids at one point. Like there's a tension between the couple that you don't see in the original film, and maybe it's like the movie trying to say that they could end up like the parents. I don't know. They don't dig into it too much. But like Ryan Reynolds has this kind of like happy-go-lucky attitude about him. He's friends with like frat boys and stuff like that. The daughter, I don't know. Like the daughter, I kind of wish they did more of her. She felt.
Yeah, she doesn't really have much to do. The most we kind of get out of her is like in the beginning of the movie, we see Albert Brooks kind of like organizing this extravagant wedding for her, and she's like, I just really want 6 people on the beach, and he's like, no, this is the wedding you want, and then she's like, I guess, and then she's kind of like not really enjoying herself at like the rehearsal dinner or anything, and ultimately the wedding kind of doesn't happen because after the bomb goes off, like everything gets washed away. So she is able to have her wedding on the beach, and that's kind of her arc, I guess, in the movie.
Yeah,
She gets the wedding she wants, and she has some funny moments too.
she does. She
Yeah,
does.
like during the bachelorette party, like she lets the cops in. She's like, I thought they were strippers. I didn't really know.
Yeah, there's definitely some funny moments. I'll put it this way, actually. While you were saying that, what I think the family does in this remake is originally like Albert Brooks is kind of being portrayed as sort of like the bad dad. He's not listening to his daughter who's telling him exactly what she wants. He kind of just forges forward and does things despite anyone else's objections to it. And then like by then you can tell that he's actually the good dad because you see all the things that Tobias is doing wrong and the way that his family feels about him. So it gives Albert Brooks a bit of an arc there to have the family react the way that they do. You do get to know a little bit more about them as parents, and it does flesh out sort of these character traits and like you mentioned, as Albert Brooks is sort of coming to his own, becoming a little bit more confident, maybe starting to listen a little bit more to people.
Mhm.
It takes him some time, but like you see an arc for him, and I think you're also seeing an arc kind of in the other way for Tobias, where he's starting to sort of calm down a little bit in a way, and I think that you need that family dynamic to see that full turn for them.
I'm trying to think of something to add about the family, but they, I mean, they get more screen time, but they don't really do too much. What do you think of like Candice Bergen kind of coming in like kind of late in the movie? I didn't think she was really necessary. I didn't think they were gonna have the mom in the movie. She didn't really add anything. We already kind of know Steve's, tough to deal with, and we obviously know they're divorced. And then we hear that they can't even sit like in the same like near each other at the wedding, so we know there's like tension there. And then it's like just to bring in a monk maybe and find out that Tobias is really good at sex.
Her showing up, it just feels very much like just a cameo, for some reason. Like she shows up and it's like, hey, it's Candice Bergman. I'm like, okay, it's Candice Bergman, and like she's there with Popo or whatever the monk's name is or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Something strange, and it doesn't pay off because he doesn't actually do anything in the wedding. Like basically the rabbi is like, this guy is an idiot, which I'm not even sure why he was there. I'm not really sure why she was there. Like you mentioned, like I think Ryan Reynolds covers the "My Dad's a Bastard"
Hmm.
storyline. I think bringing the ex-wife into it just to kind of like continue the pile on doesn't really take us anywhere. I guess we learn more about him, like you said, in the sack, and that he is, uh, that he does these big, extravagant things to basically try to buy his family's like appreciation back, more or less. But it's not enough really to justify her being in the film.
No. No, I mean Ryan Reynolds could have said that stuff. I mean, we see the big extravagant thing. We see Casey in the Sunshine Band, so
Yeah,
we know that and then he paid for dinner. He does do these big gestures. So she doesn't really do anything necessary. I guess she reinforces stuff, but I don't think it really required
yeah,
at
but like
all.
it's even like you mentioned with the family, it's reinforced several times throughout the film where when they show up in the big sweet room or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, your dad sells a lot of toner, huh?" like,
Yeah.
like, like the joke's there, and no one's intelligence is being insulted here. Like we know something's amiss. Everyone knows something's amiss. So bringing the ex-wife on doesn't really do anything other than to like kind of reiterate that once again. It's a character you could cut, or you start cutting other characters. Maybe you cut the partner, so you see less of him being a terrible guy in those situations. Maybe you give Ryan Reynolds more of like a moment where he's like, "Well, Dad, he did it again." You ruined the wedding, and he had to like redeem himself. But to have like, I don't know, like everyone's kind of mad at him, but then when he beats people up, they're all okay with it. Ryan Reynolds is like, "Well, he did show up to my Cub Scout meeting and for like self defense." You know, I don't know, just unnecessary extra character. They should have just been married, to be honest, and that would have made things a lot simpler.
Yeah, yeah. Going back, you said like he had a lot of sort of back and forth with the partner. Yeah, that's why I thought like we were just gonna have the partner instead of like bringing in the ex-wife too. It was like, okay, so he'll just have this back and forth with her, and she'll replace the wife or ex-wife. But no, they still brought her aboard, and we didn't really need her. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, still, I mean, when we were ragging on the inclusion of some of these characters, but I still did like to get to see like I think the Pizer family kind of letting us know a little bit more about Albert Brooks's character. I thought the daughter and the wife even had some pretty funny moments there too, and the dynamic between Ryan Reynolds and Lindsay Sloane was all right. So even though it got like dramatic there, like how didn't you tell me you slept with her? It's like I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Like it sort of gets resolved pretty quick and cleanly, so they didn't dwell on that too much, which I was happy because it's like we don't really need this, but it gets resolved. So just because they get more to do in the remake, um, you just got to give them a little more points. And I was happy to just see the families more in the remake.
Yeah, yeah. Overall, the choice was a good choice to include the family dynamic. I think that there may have been some different ways to work around it a little bit, but it didn't detract too much. It did bring certain elements of humor to the film as well, where it may have been missing some of that direct kind of back and forth dialogue between our two leads. Uh, that, like we mentioned before, the Peter Falk and Alan Arkin dynamics felt a little bit more natural. I think Albert Brooks and Michael Douglas a little bit less so, but like clearly there are different pairings that do work. Like Albert Brooks talking to like we said, to
Thibodeau, Jean
yeah,
Pierre.
the Thibodeau character, whether it's him interacting with his daughter, there are these really funny beats throughout, and I think if you take the family out of it, it does hurt the movie. So I think it's a good inclusion, but they're you know not perfect. Some things are left on the table, is what I'll say.
There you go. Well said. Are there any other characters or sort of plot
Okay.
points you wanted to talk about in either movie?
Yeah, here's one, and it's not a major plot point, but just wanted to see what your take was on this.
Okay.
Why the podiatrist? What?
I think it's just poking fun. I think there was that one joke in the beginning of the movie. He's like, he's a doctor. You know how they can be. So I think it was just to like, oh, he's a doctor, and then he's sort of giving this speech to this patient, just like, you need to really listen to me. This is really serious. Fungus, foot fungus. I think it was just honestly just for that setup and joke. I think just to make fun of podiatry.
Yeah.
I don't really think anything about it was like that they really needed. I mean, it did come into play later. We do get to see him use that move, but like you said, it's kind of undermined by the fact that he immediately gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
So it was sort of pointless. But I think it's just to give Albert Brooks like just some funny medical things to do. We do get to see him in a lecture hall, kind of giving like extravagant names to like things like the bunion. I forget what the medical term for it was, but just to see Albert Brooks do funny medical things, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. I guess like I was just trying to figure out why he's a podiatrist instead of a dentist. Maybe I'm an anti-dentite or something like that. But no, I mean, no, you're right. You're right. I got a little distracted by it, but nothing too major to harp on. I just wanted to see what your take was on it because I thought it was a little strange switching their careers because I think you could have made a lot of the same jokes in the same career, but I mean, this movie is doing its own thing, so I don't fault
Yeah.
it. I just thought it was kind of a weird place to make a change, but not doesn't hurt anything in any direction.
What'd you think about the? Let's go back to the remake. What'd you think about all the attention the fanny pack was getting in that remake?
I'm biased because I don't mind a fanny pack. I think it's a joke they ran with it. I mean, there's a couple of jokes in my opinion that don't really like land for me in the remake. And trust me, we can do the same thing in the original. So I'm not picking on the film too much. But like when they blackmailed the FBI guy and he was like, oh, I was pledging in college. I thought that joke was a little like weird, and off.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna put it sign of times. I mean, this wasn't very long ago, but it's still like 17 years ago at this point. So yeah, the bits like that really didn't land as hard for me, but I didn't think it was terrible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What are you gonna do? Some jokes ended up a little bit flat in both, so that's yeah. You're gonna just pick and choose your battles, I guess. What type of humor you like. I don't really have anything plot wise to talk about. I did want to talk a little bit about that music because I know they spent a lot of that money in the remake, so I just wanted to just to touch upon that just a
Sure.
little bit. So in the remake, we open up with Paul McCartney, so that's not cheap, and then we go into an Elvis song. So again, we're spending lots of money here. I already mentioned that they actually got Casey from Casey and the Sunshine Band in this movie, so they're playing a lot of hits in this remake, and yeah, I'm sure those songs weren't cheap. So I'm sure they spent a lot of money there, and which was very different from the original, where we don't have any of that stuff. It's just a score, really. And I was just curious if you had any feelings about just hearing another pop song as opposed to just a nice score like the original.
I think it's kind of just a sign of what this film was trying to do, which is it's modernizing the in-law story. I think that it's clearly a really sort of star-studded affair in terms like the Ryan Reynolds, the Michael Douglas, Bergman, stuff like that. So I just think that they were trying to do this movie big, and they chose to do music that would be recognizable, that'd be commercial, and that you could sell. It's kind of cute. Like we've seen a lot of movies that do this where they make the reference to, oh, it's the first karaoke song we did, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's the actual band. Like it's okay. Um, the music didn't really stick with me really in any other way than that. Like I did notice that they were like pop songs, but I think the biggest music thing that stuck with me was like the Casey and the Sunshine Band. I'm like, I guess that's cool, but that's it was like interesting, like you said, interesting use of funds. Like I think,
Yeah, yeah. They didn't. I mean, they didn't just get any songs. They got the big hits from
yeah,
all these bands, So it was an interesting use of funds, and I don't know, just you know, we've heard a lot of these songs in other movies. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So it didn't feel incredibly original to hear them again in this film. I mean, I haven't seen Casey and the Sunshine Band in many films, so that's cool. Sure. Well, I guess I didn't really love it because I'd already heard all those songs in every other movie before.
I put it this way, like I barely even noticed it because I was too busy trying to figure out like some of the different choices they made with I don't know, Michael Douglas, as I mentioned, it just felt like they were trying to make him way too cool. And like Michael Douglas is a cool guy, but I'm like, all right, I don't necessarily need to see like this like borderline geriatric guy like getting in all these fist fights and like parachuting and stuff like that. Like that's not what really made the original funny to me. So I thought it was strange that, like you mentioned, that they're focused on these big things when it's like, honestly, you put those two actors in a room, you're actually going to get more out of like having those two like tied up and having like an argument than you are them like jumping out of a plane. It's kind of unnecessary use of funds, but I appreciate that they went big. Can't fault them for that.
Well, that's good. Actually, I did want to talk about the action in both films. So that's kind of a good that you kind of led us there. Yeah, like we already said this before. Michael Douglas sticks to do a lot of physical stuff, gets in a lot of fights, jumping off buildings.
Give me a hug.
Are you crazy?
Fine, I'll hug you.
What are you doing? Holy mother of We're fine.
On the jet ski chase over there with a missile.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure there's at least 2 or 3 guys that are worse.
I guess just going back to what you kind of said before, I feel like they just try to modernize it. Like, this guy really is a spy. We're like, we'll prove it to you. Like, look at all this crazy shit he's doing, right? You didn't see him do any of this crazy shit back then. This is what a spy does in the 21st century. So, yeah, I think they just felt like they had to up the action. Even though after talking about it with you, it sounds like they probably didn't really have to. And like I said, it really sort of takes away that ambiguity. Is he good? Is he bad? Well, we kind of know he's good because we've seen him in all these action set pieces.
What I really like about the original film is you don't know. You spend the entire film, you don't know what's up with Peter Falk. It could swing either way. Like at the end of that film, if it all ended up being a big con, that would have made sense too. And this film, I don't know, like the action, it's not bad. Like he's getting in some good fights and stuff like that. Like the sequence in the bathroom's good. It's a little goofy with the sound and the torpedo, but like you know what, I'll work with you. It doesn't kill the mood.
Yeah, I don't know if a little air horn would even be loud enough while you're on a jet ski that's going like a full speed. I don't even think it would really register or matter. Yeah, just to suspend some disbelief there. Going back to the action sequences, the one thing that definitely stands about the action sequences in the remake is just the terrible, terrible CGI that we are subjected to. This is 2003. That's after The Matrix. Matrix looks good still. This one does not. Especially like when they're jumping off that building.
I was gonna say that one.
Yeah, that's when it really looks the worst. It's just like I don't know what they did, but the two of them falling with the building in the background just looks terrible. Obviously, them on a jet skis, it looks like it's either them in front of a green screen or them in front of a projection screen because that looks pretty fake too. So yeah, it's some laughable effects in that remake for sure.
Because they're still in that comedy territory, I'm not taking the tech as seriously. Yeah. And some of the tech actually just seem frivolous and kind of ridiculous to me. Like when the FBI is chasing him and he's got an elevator randomizer.
Yes. And, how often do you don't use your elevator randomizer every day, Reggie? I do.
I just what? I don't give a fuck about that. Excuse my language, but like you said, I like more the Bourne style stuff. Like you're better off with him in the shootouts, like at the beginning of the movie, than you are with little Q gadgets and stuff like that. I think they're trying to straddle that line too much between undercover kind of spy guy and CIA, and I think that you're probably better off with more of the blunt sort of force that you get from Peter Falk, which is he not often in the film, but at least once he has a gun and he's shooting it at people. And that's pretty much all you need to raise the stakes. I just think that Michael Douglas just has too many tools in the chest, and he doesn't use them enough consistently to make them even worth being in the film. So I think you get just the same effect in the fight scene in the bathroom, which is one of the stronger action sequences in the film. Mm-hmm. Which is all right, he's fighting this guy and there's a shootout. Again, that's all I need to take the stakes from being a podiatrist to being in an international potential arms ring that. Mm-hmm. That's all you need. But I think the movie is kind of genre mixing a little bit more than they should. And I saw you had a note on this a little bit, but I wanted to bring it up because it is a character to an extent. The federal agents in this one too play a lot of comedic relief, and it's hard to take them very seriously. So it's hard to take some of the action very seriously by that kind of transitive property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're pretty much pointless characters as well. I think they're in there to kind of raise the tension, but like we said, the remake does a lot to sort of establish credibility to what Michael Douglas is doing. So we know the FBI is after them, but we're not worried that anything bad's gonna happen because we're pretty sure that Michael Douglas is on the up and up, and then everything's gonna pan out okay. So I didn't think we needed them at all. And like their role is pretty much what Egg Bagley Jr. did in the original, and he only has like 2, 3 scenes, and he did what he needed to do in a shorter amount of time, and all he was. He just answered the phone, said, "Oh yeah, he doesn't work here anymore." And he comes in at the end, and says, "Yeah, he does work here. I was just lying to you." See, then that's all we really needed. We didn't need like this constant like FBI hunt. We got to get them. We're gonna stop them because this guy's a terrorist. This guy's a criminal. And it's like, I don't believe you because you've shown me other things to the contrary. That this is a very capable CIA agent. And I'm gonna stick with that storyline because I don't think you're gonna do anything to Michael Douglas's character.
Yeah. Now to your point, Ed Begley, like in those 3 moments, again, is actually one of the more memorable and funny people in the film. Like one picking up the phone at the CIA in the first place. Like that by itself is kind of funny. And then at the end, hey, you guys are forgetting something. My invitation. You're like, yeah.
And then what does he give him? Like a $50 certificate to
Yeah,
sell?
$50 like savings bond.
Oh, the cheap CIA. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
And then when the daughter starts to like pick up the thing to receive the letter, they're like, put the $1 million away. Like again, like this, the movie's so brilliant between the margins. That original film, the remake could let itself do a little bit more of that. To your point too, with the FBI, like I don't know, like in the original film, they show up and they say, you could be in trouble for these engravings, like forgery and stuff like that, and like you actually believe it. You do, like, to your point, you actually believe it because I don't know if Peter Falk is just screwing this guy over because he's saying he's being a nice guy, but he planted evidence at his house. He like forced him to do things that like implicate him in the crime, and like throughout, he's really dragging Alan Arkin through this entire experience. And Alan Arkin, who is the type of guy who had enough credibility to get himself out of it, is being undermined by like actually trying to be a nice guy. Whereas in this other film, I, who cares who catches who? Like you said, it feels like it's going to get straightened out either way in a way that I don't feel the same way in the original.
I mean, I got nothing else to say about the FBI. I did want to go back to the action, unless you have anything else.
No. I mean, action. I think
Yeah, I just
action.
want to talk about the action in the original.
Oh
Actually,
yeah.
yeah. So I know there's more action in the remake, and I was trying to show Michael Douglas cool. Like the bathroom scene was cool, but I think the action in the original is actually pretty good. We don't get a lot of action sequences, but they're still pretty enjoyable to watch. Mostly they're done on the car, like car chases and stuff like that. And there's a really cool scene. I just had to bring this up because I rewound this a couple times just to see like how it's done. Like Alan Arkin's character, he's like they're gonna leave him behind. Like he gets a taxi, and then he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go." He's like, "All right, leave me behind. I don't want to go." And then he changes his mind last minute. He's like, "I want to go. I want to go. I want to go." So you actually see it's a one shot. Alan Arkin kind of run out of the building, and then like he goes behind or like a newsstand or something, and then you see him again, and then he jumps onto the top of the roof of the cab, and that was all done in one take. And I was just like, did Alan Arkin just jump onto a moving car? So I rewound it a couple of times. It's just a clever placement of that newspaper stand to just have him and like the stuntman kind of swap places like immediately. So it was done in one flawless shot. I thought that was really impressive. I mean, I just have to give props where props are due.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I watched. I didn't rewatch it, but I watched that scene really closely because like there is that play. It's like, is that the stunt man? Is that Alan Arkin? Because it's actually one very believable. Not many films pull this off so cleanly, but you're right. That little transition, it made it just look much more believable.
Mm-hmm.
It does look like they probably sped up the footage a little bit of the guy hanging on just to make it look a little more, interesting. But like, no, there's some really good action sequences and very good set pieces that you can tell took a long time to set up. They probably on a lot of these scenes really only had one, maybe 2 takes, and to get it in the can. You're right. I definitely shouldn't gloss over the action in that first film because there's a lot of really, really good moments. Whether it's the plane Again, very kind of simple stuff, but like impactful. The plane going in reverse and then taking off and stuff like that. I think that was done really well. My wife started watching a little bit of it while I was watching it, and she said, "Oh, they really hate fruit stands." They're like, they really hate.
as well as the bad.
They run over a lot of like bananas and stuff like that. It's a really cool movie. When you see action, there's still humor in the action. Like when they're on the tarmac and the guy just got blasted, sniped, and they're going serpentine. Like in another film, that's a horrific moment. In this film, it's just a funny moment, you know?
Great action set pieces in the original film, which I did not expect it. So I just, again, just props, great car chase scenes.
Yeah. The
That,
Alan Arkin running through the city while he's being chased.
yeah,
That's a great scene.
true.
That's really well shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like yeah, like we said, like, he's getting shot at, like just using a car as cover, and then like all the people out, like I guess he's in New York, and they're just like kind of watching him, just like, oh, it's like in broad daylight, and especially what's going on these days, it's like man, this is some wild shit they put in this
Yeah.
original movie. So
There's such a funny line, and like if you're not paying attention, it's a throwaway line. He's as he's running and he's getting shot. He's like, God, please don't let me die on West 31st
yeah,
Street. Dude, I mean, Arkin's just delivering lines, man. Like
yeah,
he was great. He was
yeah.
great. Actually, was good. I mean, like it was so good. I almost didn't really have much to say about it because like it got the job done. Whether that sense of showing Alan Arkin stepping up is,
Yeah.
I think, where I think the action sequences really work because Peter Falk, yeah, we know he's a CIA guy, kind of. I believe it. Maybe I don't. Um, but Alan Arkin, when he's being chased in the office and he throws the bag out the window and he's jumping out the window, he's running around. He's like, "You don't have to shoot me. We can talk this out." And it's just such a great way of taking this mild mannered character and making him an impactful, strong character in these short, quick, well done action sequences.
Well said. I got nothing else to add to that.
I'm just
Uh,
glad you brought it back up because I was going to gloss over because there's so many bells and whistles to the remakes action that,
mhm.
to your point, like let's take a note from the original and say that like in these little moments you can make big impacts on your film.
All right. I mean, do you have anything else to say about either film, or is it verdict time?
I think it might be verdict time.
All right. Well, Reggie, we've reached the end of our comparison, so that means it's time for one thing. Reggie, should the remake exist?
I think we might part ways on this one. I know often we're kind of in lockstep on this, but here's my thing. The original film, you just have two comedic geniuses. You got Columbo himself, Mr. Peter Falk. You got Alan Arkin, who's just an incredible actor, and those two are like, I mean, they are firing on all cylinders. They're playing off each other really well. After watching the movie, I watched an interview, and someone was asking how much of it was improvised, and apparently not much of it. Apparently, the script was that strong. Like it felt natural, which is why you would even ask if it was improvised. Like it just felt like those guys really like just captured this on-screen chemistry. In the remake, I didn't feel the chemistry between Douglas and Albert Brooks as much as maybe Albert Brooks and some of the other characters. I felt that at times they were trying to make Michael Douglas like look too cool. It was like it felt like he signed on and was like, "Look, I'll do it, but you got like we got to like juice this up a little bit." Um, I found a lot of it to be like boring to an extent, even when they were trying to pick it up. I think I really was missing the two main characters having this like tight chemistry. I think that some of the characters that were added to flesh things out, although they're great actors, like Ryan Reynolds is great, I think he was underused. Just all of it didn't feel cohesive and clean to me. There were definitely elements of the movie that I liked, but honestly, I don't think that this remake should exist because it doesn't capture the spirit of the original film. So it was a fine movie, but an In-Laws reboot, no, I don't. I don't think it should have been. I don't think that it should have been categorized as the In-Laws remake. It didn't feel like it to me.
Yeah, we're gonna have a party here because I think it should exist. I didn't mind the remake so much. I don't think it's as strong as the original, but I think they did enough stuff differently to sort of merit it being made. Like I said, I'm a big Albert Brooks fan, so I think like he's really enjoyable to watch, even if he's more enjoyable to watch with David Schuett instead of his scenes with Michael Douglas, and he still has some good banter with Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
But yeah, that original pair in the original film is definitely the stronger of the two. But I still think there's some good things going on in the remake. Like I said, one of the things I wanted was more of the family, and we got more of the family, and they were funny. You know, they might not have helped progress the plot forward, but you know, it is a comedy, and at least they were funny and had stuff to do, and I can remember stuff they did instead of like the original where they didn't really matter. And sure, they added some characters. Like I think that the Angela character was pretty pointless in the remake. You know, it's not a perfect remake, and yeah, they definitely try to make Michael Douglas too cool. But I'd say it's a serviceable film, and it was just good enough for me, Reggie. Where I was like, all right, you're fine, you're good. It could exist for me.
Yeah, I just think that for me, Michael Douglas, I can't really think of too many points where like the Michael Douglas stuff made me laugh, which I thought was like kind of like the movie's sitting there, like the other people were being funnier, and I can point to more kind of like you mentioned, funny Albert Brooks moments. I'm grading on a very rough scale because of how highly I think of the original film. So I can certainly say that that is jading my opinion a bit. Like I said, I don't mind this remake as a movie. I mind it as the remake to the original film, and that's pretty much I think really the only spot where I think we tend to disagree here because I think you're right that it is a serviceable film. I can't admit that, but as the remake, I can't endorse it as existing as build.
Well, that's fine, man. I mean, like, I never saw the original before. I thought it was a pretty good movie too. Like, it's not like one of my favorite movies. It definitely had some moments where it was a little slow for me too.
Hmm.
But it's still the stronger of the two for sure. But I think that the remake did enough to kind of merit it being made, and yeah, just I can't deny an Albert Brooks performance,
Yeah,
man. I'm
yeah.
too big of a fan. I'm too close to it, Reggie. I'm too
No,
close to it.
I hear you. And upon like watching it again, I did feel like because when I originally recommended the films, I think that I really did remember a lot of the high moments of the original film, and when I watched it, it did feel a little bit slower than the first time I watched it. I think that on my first view, I just found that dynamic to be so funny, and then rewatching it, a little bit of the shine had come off a little bit. I remember more of the film feeling like the TT Fly conversation, and it really isn't.
Hmm.
There is a lot of like kind of slow pacing and kind of dead space in that original film. And I think the remake does pick up a bit of that. I just think that where it suffers the most, the remake, is probably in the jokes department because some of the jokes haven't aged very well. But yeah, I get it. I'm too close to the original and you're too close to Albert Brooks. And it's all good.
I will say this though: the remake, thankfully, is not longer, so
Yeah,
that's always good in my book. If your movie's not going to be as good, don't make it longer, because
I,
that's a big movie sin.
I
So
agree.
happy about that.
What
All
what do
right,
you
well,
what do you think about leaving the partner in the ocean at the end of the film? You think anyone's ever gonna go get her?
I don't know. I think they're just going for one more joke at the end of the movie. I
Really?
think they were just trying. I'm okay with it. She really didn't do anything in the movie, so why it doesn't even matter what she's doing in the ocean at the end.
I just hope
It's
she's
nice that they
okay.
gave her one more scene because I was like, what happened to her?
Yeah, I'm just so bummed they didn't do more with her. She was great.
I know. Yeah. What are you gonna do? That's the movie we got, and you don't think it should have been made anyway. So. All right. Well, that's where we are. Thanks for listening to this episode. Let us know how you guys think about it. Do you agree with Reggie? Do you agree with me? This is one of the few times that we disagree. These don't happen too often, so definitely chime in with your thoughts. Um, Before we plug everything, I guess we got to figure out what we're going to do for the next episode, too. If you want to try one, we could try Manhunter and Red Dragon.
It's definitely enough of a change of pace, so I could definitely get behind that.
Okay, cool. So next time we will be reviewing Manhunter versus Red Dragon. Dun, dun, dun. All right, well, again, thanks again for listening. This is Retro versus Remake. If you're not following us on the socials, you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of Retro versus Remake. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please give us a 5-star and a good review. That would greatly help us out. If you're on YouTube, of course, any comments, much appreciated there as well.
Oh, definitely thanks for the comments, because it's definitely giving us some different ideas about, what movies to watch, what we can do to make this podcast even stronger. So yeah, much appreciated.
Cool. All right, well, I'm Dan Bulick.
And I'm Reggie Parker.
This has been another episode of Retro versus Remake.